A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another RPG review, this time one that I have been wanting to do for a long time, and for whatever reason I just never got around to it, but I'm going to do it now. Now this is going to be complete self-indulgent, absolute claptrap, and I apologize for that, but I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, primarily Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I played Dungeons & Dragons back in the day, started with 2nd edition, absolutely loved AD&D 2nd edition. The Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, back when the monster manuals were just folders with like loose leaf folders in them. But it's a game that's very near and dear to my heart. I had a lot of fun playing it all through high school. Went off to uni, found groups to play it there. 3rd edition came out, got some friends into it. My good friend Ian Van Gammett of Plaguelands Media, his first role-playing experience was Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. When I ran the campaign that he was a part of, he was a chaotic evil dark elf cleric of Cyric. Yes, I let that shit into my game just because they could find ways to make it work, and it's all about the story. The campaign that I was running for them at the time was basically a multiverse spanning campaign. They started in Faerun, the Forgotten Realms, and they were tasked with recovering 7 urns that contained the ashes of a demon lord. They went to Sigil in Planescape, and from there they went all over the place. There was an adventure that was set in the realm of the Mind Flayer god, and they traipsed through his brain to find parts of it. They went to Dargard Keep in Kryn after the War of the Lance, and it was just an absolute ton of fun. 4th edition came out. Not really a huge fan of 4th edition. In fact, although I did buy as many books as I possibly could, I ended up selling them all. Got into Pathfinder, ran a Pathfinder campaign over here with my wife and a few friends. My wife played a paladin. I was running the Rise of the Rune Lords campaign. Was a lot of fun. And then 5th edition came out. Got rid of all my Pathfinder stuff, and I did have a lot of it. Just for the sake of room, I love Pathfinder, don't get me wrong. Golarion is one of the greatest worlds ever conceived for a role-playing game, but I just wanted the room for 5th edition. Got the 5th edition Player's Handbook. Absolutely loved it. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition collection. I'm not going to go in order of publication. Everything is just kind of randomized. I'm going to talk about source books. I'm going to talk about the campaigns. I'm going to talk about the 3 main core books. My thoughts on them. Why am I doing this now? Well, Wizards of the Coast released their, what's coming up for Dungeons & Dragons from 2023 to 2024. I thought it was very interesting, and I just want to contribute my 2 cents with the things that I have. That's the only reason I'm doing this. So, let's get into it. Player's Handbook. First of all, the cover art on every single one of these books released by Wizards of the Coast. And just a caveat, I'm not going into Kickstarters that use 5th edition rules or anything like that. While I do have a few of them, I'm simply sticking to official Wizards of the Coast 5th edition releases. So just keep that in mind. I might do a video later on the other stuff, but this is just official releases from Wizards of the Coast. Player's Handbook. First of all, very well written, very well laid out. You have your races, your classes. I'm not going into the rules. I'm not going to talk about the rules. I just want to talk about how I feel about each of these books. There are a few little problems with the rules system, in as much as it depends on if your characters are min-maxes. There are some exploits that you can do. You know what? I don't really care about that kind of thing. My players want to do that. They can do that. I'm there to tell a story, and that's what I'm going to do. So that's the Player's Handbook. Then we have the Dungeon Master's Guide. I believe they're re-releasing all of these. The Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, Monster Manual. And I believe they said that the Dungeon Master's Guide is going to be more user-friendly for new players. This is pretty good. It, just tells you how to run a game, basically. There's magic items, stuff like that. All the usual stuff you'd find in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And the Monster Manual, of course, is a masterpiece. Every monster gets a picture, some flavor text, and the stat block, what they can do, what they can't do. So, yeah, nothing really to say about the three main core books. They're fantastic. I love them. There will be a permanent part of my collection. I don't care if they release a 6th edition or whatever. Absolutely love these three books. They are sticking around. Okay. Let's move on to the source books. Now, the first source book that they released, and I know I said I wasn't going to do this in order, but I do want to talk about this one, is the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. They wanted to make Faerun, the Forgotten Realms, the main world, I guess you would say, of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which is perfectly fine with me. I absolutely love the Forgotten Realms. The old Forgotten Realms novels are phenomenal. Yeah, they changed it up a bit when they did 4th edition. They introduced like the Dragonborn and all that kind of stuff. I don't really care about that. It's just a great, world. Full stop. Now, back in the day, they focused on the Dale Lands as the major hub for, your Dungeons and Dragons games. They wanted you to basically play in Shadowdale, and Zental Keep was very close by, and Elminster lived in Shadowdale, and Cormyr was really close, and whatever. With the popularity of video games like Boulders Gate, Neverwinter Nights, the novels by R.A. Salvatore, they kind of shifted their focus to the Sword Coast. And so you have the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Gives you a few options as a player, but it's mainly just the, information about the Sword Coast. If you want it, different gods, who's worshipped where, and that kind of thing. This is a perfectly fine read, but ultimately it doesn't add a lot to the game. So, not really necessary, but I enjoyed reading this nonetheless. Okay, let's move on to Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Xanathar is the beholder that kind of runs the crime guild in Waterdeep, and he's kind of a crime lord, beholder. Fantastic cover once again. This is a cool book. This gives you a lot of character options. Different. When you reach 3rd level, different paths you can take for your characters, barbarians, druids, bards, all that kind of thing. Basically, this is just more character options, more spells, more of everything, which is always good in a game of Dungeons and Dragons. You just, any good role-playing game, you want to give your characters options so they can personalize their characters a lot more. This is a fine book. I enjoyed it. It was a good read, and it opened up a lot, in my opinion. Okay. Volos Guide to Monsters. Volo is a key figure in the Forgotten Realms. He is a writer who travels the realms, kind of, documenting things. Now, Volo's Guide to Monsters is good for two reasons. The first is it gives you the lore behind monsters and how to personalize all the big bads of the Forgotten Realms. Beholders, giants, gnolls, all that kind of thing. So you can basically, instead of just having the players fight generic monsters, you can personalize them a lot more, which I think is cool. Kobolds, it's just fun. You also have new races, which is always great. My favorite in this, of course, being the Tritons. I think this is a fantastic race, and if I ever played a character, it would be something like that. And then you have the Bestiary. This is just more monsters. You cannot go wrong with more monsters. And these are some monsters that I remember from 2nd edition back in the day. So this was, the good old Froghemoth. So this was a really cool addition to the source books. Okay, what's next? A couple of Modern Kanan books now. Modern Kanan is a wizard who I believe originated in the Greyhawk, the Greyhawk setting, and there are spells named after him because Modern Kanan created a whole lot of spells. So we have Modern Kanan's Tome of Foes. Now this gives you a lot of backstories on like the Blood War, which is the war between demons and devils that is being fought in the Outer Realms. But you also get, some backstory on like different races, like dwarves, halflings, all that kind of thing. And then you get a whole ton of new monsters, and these are mainly demons and devils, as well as demon lords. You got like Orcus, the demon lord of the undead. Jubilex, love Jubilex, demon lord of oozes. Grazit, Demogorgon, Baphomet. So you get demons, devils, and a whole bunch of new monsters. Now, I enjoyed Modern Kanan's Tome of Foes. It's not for everyone. I'll admit that. But, I mean, more choices, more monsters. It's always good. Okay, next up. Modern Kanan presents Monsters of the Multiverse. One of the newer ones. I believe I've already talked about this in a video. This kind of consolidates all the new character races that you can play, with the exceptions of some of the ones that are in the Magic the Gathering, Ravnica and whatnot. So you got some kind of new races that you can play if you want to be a Ninja Turtle. And then a lot of the monsters. Now a lot of these are found in some of the other books. So you're doubling up. If you purchase this, you might be doubling up on a few things, but you know, this is good if you haven't got a lot of the other source books and you want to consolidate some new races and new demons and demon lords and devil lords and whatnot. Pretty good. Okay. Tashas Cauldron of Everything. New rules options in this book. That's primarily what it is. So we get a new class, the Artificer, which is pretty interesting. And new optional class features for like the Barbarian, the Bard. These are really cool, like optional class features for Cleric, Druid. One of my favorites, however, and the Rune Knight is pretty cool. They use like giant runes and stuff. Is the Ranger, actually. The Ranger has Fey Wanderer, the Swarm Keeper. Now this is, in my opinion, one of the coolest class options you could be. So you're a ranger who is connected to like a swarm of bees or something like that, and they kind of work with you and fight with you. That, just reading through this book, reading through these character options, opens up the imagination, makes me want to play a game of Dungeons and Dragons and create a character based on some of this. And that is the sign of a good source book. If you can imagine yourself kind of playing as different things, if you can read like the description of a wizard and then just think, how would I play that? Or why would I play that? I think that's a sign of a good source book. So we have like group patrons, things like that, magical miscellany, new magic items, all kinds of cool stuff. Not a necessary source book, but a fun source book. And in my opinion, that is really what matters. That's Tashas Cauldron of Everything. Okay. Vanricktons Guide to Ravenloft. Holy shit, do I love this fucking book. I love this book so goddamn much. Why? First of all, Ravenloft. Ravenloft is an amazing setting. For those of you who don't know what Ravenloft is, Ravenloft was an old first edition adventure where the party came up against the vampire lord Strahd von Zarovich. They would go into Castle Ravenloft and have to fight this vampire lord. Strahd von Zarovich I will talk about later, but I will just say is one of the greatest undead characters ever to come out of Dungeons and Dragons history. They made the Ravenloft campaign setting for 2nd edition. It came in a boxed set with a whole lot of little books, and basically it was a whole lot of lands that were kind of connected, but there was mist in between them. So if you're in a land, you couldn't leave because the mist was poisonous. Each land was ruled by a Dark Lord, and the Dark Lord was usually a tragic figure who did something incredibly evil and then was trapped in this land, and the land was their curse. And it focuses heavily on undead and gothic horror and things like that. Vanricktons is a character who was a doctor whose wife was killed, and his son was turned into a vampire, and he hunted his son down, and ultimately the son begged him to end his life. And then he made it his crusade to go around fighting evil. In the 2nd edition of Dungeons and Dragons, there was a lot of source books on different undead monsters. So you had like Vanricktons Guide to Werewolves, Vanricktons Guide to Mummies, Vanricktons Guide to Vampires. So this is Vanricktons Guide to Ravenloft. So you have backgrounds character options, all that kind of stuff. Then you get to the different like ideas of dark fantasy, ghost stories, folk horror. What sort of a game do you want to play? Then you get to the domains. Now, the domains of Ravenloft are awesome. So we have Barovia. This is the original Ravenloft domain. You get some backstory. You get some information on the Dark Lord, in this case, Strahd von Zarovich. So you get his history. And then you get what kind of adventures are good for adventuring in Barovia. Bluetspur was Mind Flayer domain. Borka. You get a ton of them. So there's a ton of options, a ton of backstories, and they are all really, really interesting to read. Like, I genuinely really love Ravenloft. Haslan, which the Dark Lord is a Red Wizard of Thay. Thay being a part of the Forgotten Realms, run by wizards, the most powerful of that being Zastam, a lich. It's just a fantastic read. But what I love the most about this book is... Okay, this part here. This is what I love the most about this book. Mist Wanderers. So you get information on adventurers that are traveling through the mists. Aramis Vanricktons, Ferenz Alhonen, Jandar Sunstar. Jandar Sunstar was the main character of the very first Ravenloft novel, Vampire of the Mists. Jandar Sunstar was a gold elf vampire from the Forgotten Realms who found himself in Barovia, and you get information if you want to include him in your adventures. Larissa Snowmane from the Ravenloft novel Dance of the Dead. Rudolf van Richten, connecting it back to the history of Ravenloft. That's what I appreciate most about this book. Very, very cool. Really great read. Okay. Emberron Rising from the Last War. Emberron was a campaign setting that I actually never got into. I didn't buy any of the supplements. I didn't buy any of the novels. After reading this, I actually have a lot of the audiobooks, which I've listened to. Emberron it's an interesting setting. It's got a little bit of technology. This is where Warforged came from. Warforged are, of course, so you can actually be Warforged characters, and they are almost like sentient robots, so to speak, like metal golems. It's an interesting setting, but ultimately not one of my more favorite settings. I love what they've tried to do, where they've tried to incorporate a little bit of technology in. There's like trains and things like that. And I love that they brought it into 5th edition. But yeah, one of my least read campaign books. Acquisitions Incorporated. Okay. This is based on a kind of a group that plays live at conventions and things like that. Acquisitions Incorporated is basically franchising out your adventurers like they are for hire, so to speak. There's a lot of comedy in this book. And it's fine, but this is probably my least favorite of all of the all of the source books, just because I wasn't a fan of, like, you can actually watch Acquisitions Incorporated play live on YouTube, and it's fun, but not my style of gaming, but has some interesting ideas in it. Okay, we are now moving on to a double feature. Guildmasters Guide to Ravnica and Mythic Odysseys of Theros. Now, I played Magic the Gathering back in the day. I believe the last block I played was Mirrodin block. Ravnica came out very shortly after that, if not directly after that. And Ravnica kind of introduced double-coloured decks. So you have like Boros, Selesnya, things like that. I was very hesitant when I heard about Guildmasters Guide to Ravnica. Didn't really care. Bought it anyway because it is Dungeons and Dragons, Wizards of the Coast. This book is freaking awesome. I'm so glad I bought this. First of all, it tells you what kind of house you can answer some questions. So we have Dimir, which I believe was blue-black. Simic was blue-green. Izzet was blue-red. Golgari was black-green. Rakdos was black-red. Gruul. What was Gruul? Maybe green-red. Boros was white-red. You know, all these kind of things. Then you get some new races. Elf, Centaur, Loxodon. While I never actually played any Loxodon cards, I did have 4 Loxodon Warhammers in my cat deck. Ian, you know what I'm talking about, buddy. They gave you the +2 attack and the lifelink. Oh, yeah. You can play as goblins, minotaurs, Simic hybrids, Videlkin. I had some Videlkin wizards in my blue deck, I remember. Maybe I did play some Ravnica. Interesting. Absolutely fantastic book. It has an adventure in it as well. Really, really enjoyed this one. I'm hoping they release a Dominaria source book that has some Phyrexian stuff in it. Those of you that know Magic the Gathering know what I'm talking about. Those of you that don't, I'm really sorry. Guildmasters Guide to Ravnica, pleasantly surprised. Pleasantly surprised. That brings me on to Mythic Odysseys of Theros, another Magic the Gathering inspired source book. Again, wasn't initially planning on buying this. I bought this for one reason and one reason only. Leonin characters. Oh yes, cat people. Ian, I'm talking to you, buddy. My cat deck. Come on, dude. You've got to love it. You've got to love it. Leonines were initially introduced in Mirrodin block. And I had a deck, a white tribal cat deck, which was so much fun to play. So when I saw that there were Leonine characters, I thought, I'll buy this. You know, whatever. Get some new races. The Satyrs. Tritons are back in this one. A couple of new subclass options. This is one of the coolest settings. This is basically bringing Dungeons and Dragons into Greek mythology. And I have no problem with that. The realm, very well fleshed out. The gods, are amazing. It is just a beautifully done source book. So some new monsters, harpies, leonine, rams, nymphs. Absolutely love this. So glad I got it. Mythic Odysseys of Theros. Okay, moving on to Fisburns, Treasury of Dragons. Who is Fisburn? Fisburn is the god Paladine from Dragonlance's Krynn. Paladine being the god of metallic dragons, Bahamut, depending on how you want to look at it. But this is the first indication that they were introducing Dragonlance into 5th edition. Of course, we got the new novel Dragons of Deceit, which I am reading and will review very, very shortly. And I believe in December, the new Dragonlance campaign is coming out, along with a board game called Warriors of Krynn, which can be a standalone strategic battle game, or you can use it in conjunction with the role-playing game to add a little bit of spice to your large battles. Okay, what is this about? This is about dragons. We get some new kind of sub-races for dragon kind, some history of dragons. So now you can be a chromatic dragonborn, gem dragonborn, or metallic dragonborn. You can be a Way of the Ascendant Dragon monk or a Drake Warden Ranger. They're the only 2 different class features. We get dragon magic, dragon followers, dragon lairs, dragon magical items, dragon hordes. Like a whole lot of stuff in this book. If you want a dragon themed game, this is great. Some really great new monsters, I might add. There's different types. Sorry for that interruption. We get Draconians for the first time in 5th edition. Draconians, of course, being introduced in the Dragonlance original adventures and novel series. We have the Baz, Bozak, Capac, Sivak, and Aurak. Here, though, they are called Dreadnought, Foot Soldier, Infiltrator, Dragon Mage, and Dragon Mastermind. We have Dragon Shards, Dragon Blood Ooze. I would have liked Dracoliches to be in here, but, you can't win them all. Doesn't matter. We get a new dragon type in the Moonstone Dragon that's never been seen before. It's a brand new dragon for 5th edition. Fisburns, Treasury of Dragons. Really cool. Okay. Now, our final book that I'm going to talk about, source book, of course, Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. This comes from the people that do Critical Role. Critical Role is an online, like a streamed campaign with Mike Mercer, or Mark Mercer. Is it Mark or Mike? I'm getting that wrong. I'm just going to quickly check. Matthew. I was not even fucking close, was I? Matthew Mercer. Matthew Mercer runs a game for a lot of actors and voiceover talent. So they kind of bring the characters to life a lot. I highly recommend you go and check out some videos on the Matthew Mercer effect. Very, very interesting. So Wildemount was their kind of realm setting that they brought into this, I believe, with maybe the 2nd season of it. You can actually go back and watch all of the seasons of this on YouTube. Very entertaining. Highly recommend it. I only got this because while I do like Critical Role and I do watch it occasionally, it's not my cup of tea, so to speak. But the Echo Knight races, we get the Aarakocra, Asimir, Furbolg, Dragonborn, Denazi. Where are the... Okay, Tabaxi, Hollow One, subclasses. The Echo Knight Fighter. When I read about the Echo Knight Fighter, fucking hooked. I'm like, I'll buy this just for that. That's how fucking shallow I am. The Echo Knight is a fighter that can basically create future versions of themselves, like echoes or past versions of themselves. When they fight, the Echo kind of fights alongside them. Really, really cool. Get a great map in the back. New monsters. Of course, every good sourcebook has them. So, yeah. I also recommend on Amazon Prime is Vox Machina, which is based on like the Critical Role, I believe, season 1. A fantastic animated show. Now, along with the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, we are going to segue straight into campaigns. So I'm just going to go straight into the Critical Role campaign, Call of the Netherdeep. Now, what I love about 5th edition is that these campaigns are full. You don't really need anything else to kind of run one of these. You get the book and it gives you all of the adventures and everything like that. This one it's pretty cool. There are some great ideas here. I don't think I would ever run this, but I would use some of the ideas that are present in the campaign itself. I'm not going to spoil anything about this. This is one of the newer ones, so I don't want to really kind of ruin it for people, but that's Critical Role, Call of the Netherdeep. Now, let's get into the other campaigns. Again, these aren't really in order. What I do enjoy about the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaigns is that they kind of follow a type of enemy. So the first campaign that was ever printed was Horde of the Dragon Queen and the Rise of Tiamat, where you had your players going up against the Cult of Dragons, one of my favorite villains from Forgotten Realms, where they were basically trying to stop Tiamat from coming into the prime material plane. This introduced the idea that you could join factions like the Harpers, the Zentarum, the Emerald Enclave, things like that. And while it was spread over 2 books, I think this worked really, really well. I actually started running this at one point. These are great, very well written, very well rounded off scenarios. So if you're interested in running a dragon campaign, these 2 are your best bet. We had Princes of the Apocalypse. This is going up against the Elder Elemental Eye. Basically, you are fighting elementals in this one. What I loved about this campaign is that your players have a choice. This basically follows the same idea as the Temple of Elemental Evil, which was an old 1st edition campaign, reprinted many, many times. Fantastic video game as well. You don't have to do this in any particular order. If your characters want to go up against the Fire Elemental prince and then the water elemental prince. You can do it in whatever order. You've got the earth elemental cult, earth elemental cult, air elemental cult, fire elemental cult, and water elemental cult. And the choices they make ultimately determine the final dungeon of the campaign and the final battle. Very, very cool. And you get some great background information on the heads of all of the elemental cults themselves. Really enjoyed looking at that one. Out of the Abyss ties in with the R.A. Salvatore novels. So in this, the players have been captured by drow elves. They're in the Underdark, and the demon lords have been unleashed and are roaming the Underdark, and it is the player's job to either escape or work out how to stop them. This is a pure Underdark adventure that is at times absolutely fucking batshit crazy. I will not lie to you. There are some things in here that are just phenomenal. What I love about this is the sandbox nature of it. Like, you can basically go anywhere and do anything, and you can actually meet up with characters. If you've read the R.A. Salvatore novels, you can meet up with Bruno Battlehammer. You can visit Gauntlgrim, and it's just a lot of fun. And the opening of Out of the Abyss is just role-playing gold. Absolute role-playing gold. I mean, you start out by explaining to the Dungeon Master how your character was captured by the drow. That, to me, is just phenomenal. Absolutely love this one. Really, really cool. Okay, Tomb of Annihilation. Now we are bringing Acererak into 5th edition. Acererak, of course, being the lich that created the Tomb of Horrors, one of the most infamous Dungeons & Dragons adventures ever written. I love Tomb of Annihilation for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it's set in Chult. Chult is like a jungle, mecca where adventurers go down to test their mettle. People have like outposts down there, like almost like conquistadors and whatnot. You meet different tribes. There's an undead problem. The whole purpose behind the Tomb of Annihilation is that the Lich Acererak has created a device that is basically drawing in the souls of people that have been brought back from the dead. So if anyone has ever been resurrected, they find that they can't be healed or things like that. And the players are tasked with going to Chult and finding out what is going on. Okay, that is the first thing I love about this. But what I absolutely adore. Okay, the characters can meet Dragonbait. The characters can meet Artis Simba. Why do I love this so much? Well, Dragonbait was a key figure in the Finder's Stone trilogy, one of the first Forgotten Realms trilogies I ever read. Azure Bonds, The Werven Spur, and Song of the Saurials. Dragonbait is a Saurial who accompanies Elias of Westgate on her journey to find out exactly who she is and why she exists, basically. And by the end of that trilogy, they go up against the dead god Moanda, who is the god of rot and decay. I just can't tell you how much I love the character of Dragonbait. Artis Simba first appeared in the novel, the Harper's novel, I believe it was book 5 in the Harper series, The Ring of Winter. And so he has an artifact called the Ring of Winter that's on his person that people are trying to find. He is a fantastic character. And the fact that they brought him and Dragonbait together in this game, you can actually meet them, you can adventure with them, you can journey with them. It just struck a chord with me, and I just absolutely love Tomb of Annihilation. Plus, the final dungeon, fucking brutal. Okay, what is next? Next is Storm King's Thunder. Now, Storm King's Thunder is a giant-based campaign. So the players are going up against hill giants, fire giants, cloud giants, storm giants, frost giants. The whole point behind this is the Storm King's wife has been murdered. Humans have been framed for the killing. The giant god who has this thing called the Ordering, which basically has the ranks of the gods. So hill giants are the lowest rank, storm giants are the highest rank, and then fire giants, cloud giants, whatever, stone giants. Has decided that giants have become too lax, and he has gotten rid of the Ordering, and now all the giant types are fighting to see who is going to be number one. The reason I love this so much is because it's fucking giants. And I have never played a game or played in a game or run a game where giants were the main focus, but I love the idea of giants as the main villains so very much. This was absolutely cool. And this has dragons in it too. And you can befriend the giants, and really, like all of these campaigns I've been talking about, sandbox, very open-ended. It's not railroaded at all. Storm King's Thunder, really, really, really cool. I mean, these books have fantastic maps, great ideas, really original, and just like a hell of a lot of fun. And the Wormskull Throne, I had the second edition, no, it was the third edition adventure called the Wormskull Throne. This kind of plays on that. So really, really cool. Okay, next up, Curse of Strahd. Don't even need to tell you how fucking awesome this is. Players go to Barovia, and that's it. Completely open-ended, and you've got to work out what's going on, why you're there, and all that kind of stuff. Now, this has one of the greatest mechanisms I have ever seen. In that, let me just find it. Okay, right here. So, the players at some point are going to get a fortune red, and you do that by laying the cards out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each one of these cards tells you where a treasure is that is going to help you, or where Strahd is located, and where they can find an enemy of Strahd that might help them. Okay? Now, it is completely fucking random, and you basically read out whatever this says as the clue to where that thing is. So, for example, number 1 is the Tome of Strahd. This card tells of history, knowledge of the ancient, will help you understand your enemy. And then, where is it located? And they turn over, one of these. You can either use the Tarokka deck that Wizards of the Coast put out, or you can just use a deck of cards. So let's say you have the 8 of spades. I see a throne fit for a king. The treasure lies in Castle Ravenloft's audience hall, chapter 4, area K25. And then Strahd's enemy, whatever. So basically, when you play this, if I'm running this game and my players get their fortune told, where is the treasure, where is this, where is that, and I'm talking to another dungeon master, it's going to be completely different. And then the players kind of have to work out the clue or the riddle or whatever to get help. They don't have to. By no means, it's not necessary. That, to me, is just... it's just awesome. And if I was ever running this, I would definitely buy the Wizards of the Coast Tarokka deck if I could to run it. Curse of Strahd introduces Ravenloft. Fantastic. Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. This takes the players to Icewind Dale, made famous by R.A. Salvatore's first trilogy of novels, The Crystal Shard, Streams of Silver, and The Halfling's Gem. Icewind Dale is a brutal place. Auril, the Frost Maiden, has awoken, and there is perpetual night and perpetual winter. Players have to work out what is going on. It's pretty good. Not one of the best. Very difficult to run, in my opinion. But each player has a secret, and that's what makes this fun. Players don't know each other's secrets. Maybe it's a good secret. Maybe it's a bad secret. We don't know. But ultimately, the players have to kind of free Icewind Dale. There's a lot of stuff here. You can go into tombs. You can meet the Uthgardt tribes. Things like that. There's new magic items. Living spells. Different sorts of kobolds. It's great, don't get me wrong. I really, really love it. It's a fantastic read. But ultimately one of the more difficult Dungeons & Dragons campaigns to actually run. Okay, don't worry, we are almost done. No, we're not. We're not even close. Boulders Gate, Descent into Avernus. You see Boulders Gate, you're initially drawn to the video games. Descent to Avernus, you're in the first layer of hell. We have Zoriel on the cover. Zoriel was an angel that was tricked into basically becoming a devil. And the purpose of this is that the players have to go into the first layer of hell in order to free a city that has been dragged there. They start in Boulders Gate and kind of move on from there. Very clunky. A very clunky campaign. However, a lot of good stuff in here. The best part being Arkan the Cruel, which was a character played in Critical Role by the actor Joe Manganiello, who at the end, big spoiler here, so you might want to skip ahead about 3 minutes or so. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In the Critical Role adventure, Joe Manganiello's character, Arkan the Cruel, manages to get the Hand of Vecna. He cuts off his own hand, sticks the Hand of Vecna on, and teleports out. And he has now been immortalized. That character is immortalized in Descent into Avernus. The Hand of Vecna being a very powerful artifact in Dungeons & Dragons lore. You can actually get in vehicles and drive around hell in this. And there are different ways to actually complete the adventure. You can free the city. You can redeem Zoriel so she's no longer a devil but turns back into an angel. It's cool, very clunky, but ultimately very, very cool. So, sorry for the interruption there, but Waterdeep Dragon Heist and Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage kind of go together. Dragon Heist is an adventure that gets players from level 1 to level 5. You meet Volo from, Volo's Guide to Monsters or whatever. You get a house. The Dungeon Master decides who the villain is. There's one of 4 villains, which is really cool. And ultimately, this is a lot of fun. This is more of a city-based thing. There are some combat and whatnot, but this is more role-playing oriented. And this leads into Dungeons of the Mad Mage. Now, for those of you that are probably familiar with Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition, the Ruins of Undermountain was a mega dungeon set beneath the city of Waterdeep, made by the Mad Mage Halaster, and this is basically that. This is like 20 levels of pure dungeon delving madness. Absolutely awesome. The players can get quests, or they can just go down through the pit in the Yawning Portal, which is an inn that has the well that leads to Undermountain. There are portals. Halaster Blackcloak kind of messes with everyone. There are warring factions. There's different environments and whatnot, all in this one kind of mega dungeon. I absolutely love this. I would definitely run this for my players. I would do Dragon Heist and Dungeons of the Mad Mage if we ever did a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Really, really cool. And a fantastic throwback to the 2nd edition Ruins of Undermountain box sets. So next we're going to move into a couple of really interesting scenarios. We have Tales from the Yawning Portal. Now, the Yawning Portal is the tavern in Waterdeep that has the location, the entrance, I should say, to Undermountain in it. And Tales from the Yawning Portal was basically a series of reprinted adventures. We have the Sunless Citadel, the Forge of Fury, the Hidden Shrine of Tamakchan, White Plume Mountain, Dead in Thay, Against the Giants, and Tomb of Horrors. So you can run these as one-offs, which I think they're kind of designed to be. A few of them are old 1st edition adventures that are reprinted. Some of them are 3rd edition adventures that are reprinted. But all in all, this is pretty cool. You get quite a plethora of kind of different games, different styles, dungeon crawls, whatnot. The Sunless Citadel was one of the first 3rd edition scenarios to be printed, it's actually a really cool one. A lot of fun for 1st edition characters, of course. 1st level characters, I should say. So, yeah, this is good to just run a one-off, or if you want to kind of chuck it into an pre-existing campaign. You get some really good adventures in here, and the best part is they're not all that easy. They are actually quite difficult, which means the challenge factor is right up there. You don't have to kind of alter them for your players. Tales from the Yawning Portal. Candlekeep Mysteries, one of the newer ones. This is, well, I was skeptical when I heard that they were bringing this out. Candlekeep, of course, is the great library on the Sword Coast. If you've ever played the video game Boulders Gate, it begins in Candlekeep. Now, Candlekeep Mysteries is a set of one-shot adventures, although they don't have to be. You can put them into whatever campaign you're running, but they all revolve around books, the players getting sucked into books or things like that. They range in levels from like 1 to 13 or 14. There are some absolutely shithouse adventures in here, but then there are some absolute gold mines. I don't want to go too deeply into this because I don't want to spoil anything, but if you're a dungeon master, either looking for a one-shot to get you started or looking for even just a base for your players, because they do kind of detail Candlekeep pretty well, then this is a really good book. And the adventure ideas, there are some stellar ideas in here that you can build on. So don't just kind of think that these campaigns and scenarios are like you've got to run them as is, or you can't just pick and choose and take things from them that you want and put them into your own homebrew campaigns. You most certainly can. And Wizards of the Coast kind of encourage this as well. So keep that in mind. But Candlekeep Mysteries, you get a lot of content. Like a ton of content here. And that's kind of what you're looking for. And I love the idea, though, that all the adventures revolve around books. Because if you're running a game and your players come up, like they find a book as treasure, what are they going to do with it? Well, they can take it to Candlekeep, kind of, and it opens up a plethora of ideas for you. So that's kind of cool. That's Candlekeep Mysteries. Okay. Have you ever wanted to play Harry Potter Dungeons and Dragons? Now you can. Strixhaven, a curriculum of chaos. Strixhaven is the third in the Magic the Gathering line, I guess you could say. We had Ravnica and Mythic Odysseys of Theros, which I've talked about. But Strixhaven is basically the players are like Harry Potter. You start out at school in the first year, and then you kind of go through, and there's a whole adventure that you're kind of working on. Gives you the campus layout, all that kind of thing. Strixhaven was a pretty cool Magic the Gathering set, I will admit. They have new races. You can be an owl. What is it? An owlin, which is like an owl person, which I think is really fucking awesome. I really love this concept. But ultimately, this is a light-hearted, Harry Potter-esque campaign. And there's really nothing more to say about it. I mean, you even pick your house, though it's not the Harry Potter houses. You kind of do that. There's rules in here for extracurricular activities, after-school jobs, all of that kind of thing. Why would I purchase something like this? Because I'm a fucking idiot. But ultimately, if you want to get kids into Dungeons and Dragons, this is the way to do it. Strixhaven is basically Dungeons and Dragons at school. And I think introducing younger players, this is a fantastic way to kind of do it, because not only are you teaching them Dungeons and Dragons, which in and of itself is fucking awesome, but what the characters experience are what these kids are experiencing at school. So you can teach them responsibility, you can teach them about education, the importance of loyalty and friendship and all this kind of thing. So ultimately, while this is probably my least favorite campaign, I think there's a lot of merit in something that gets a younger generation into Dungeons and Dragons. So there is merit, and plus the Owlin are just a fucking awesome race, and I really love the idea of them. They're like the Aarakocra, but they're owls, and owls are cool. I mean, come on. Okay. Next up, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, a Feywild adventure. Basically, this is Dungeons and Dragons at a carnival. You are at a circus or a carnival and you're playing games and doing fun stuff, and then bad stuff happens, and then you have to go off on your merry adventure. It introduces the Feywild really well into 5th edition, in my opinion, the Feywild being like the fairy realm, I guess. Wasn't really interested in this. I did play a few of the games that were on the websites that was kind of introducing this, and you know, yeah, you get the Witch Queen and all that kind of stuff. But here is the kicker for The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Now, back in the day, there was the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon series. Everyone remembers, look, a Dungeons and Dragons ride. And then you had like the acrobat, the ranger, the thief, the barbarian, Bobby with his club, and he had the little unicorn, the cavalier, Eric, and blah, blah, blah. But what a lot of people might not remember is that there was a series of like Dungeons and Dragons figures and coloring in books and all that kind of stuff that introduced different characters. They're here. They've brought them back. They've brought back the Dungeons and Dragons characters from the coloring in books and shit that I grew up with into 5th edition. And that in and of itself is worth the fucking price tag of this fucking book. You've got Kalak, the sorcerer, Skylar. You've got Warduke with his winged helm and his shield and his firebrand. Zarak. Oh, man. Then you've got Valor's Call. You've got Elkhorn the Dwarf. Mericon. Molliver. Ringlerun. Strongheart the Paladin. Strongheart actually appeared in an episode of the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon where the heroes had been captured and put in prison, and Strongheart was in that same prison. Holy shit, I flipped out when I fucking saw this. Like, this to me, these characters like Warduke and Strongheart and Kalak the Sorcerer, Elkhorn the Dwarf. As a fucking kid, like I'm talking 8, 9, 10 years old, that was Dungeons and Dragons for me. I had the coloring in books. Like, this blows my fucking mind, and I cannot tell you how awesome it is to see them, to have their stats, to be able to use them. If I want to play a game of Dungeons and Dragons and I want my characters to meet Strongheart the Paladin, there we go. Right there. I can chuck him in a game, have him fight alongside my characters. If I want my characters to go up against Warduke, well, I've got the stats for Warduke now. There we go. I can just have them come up against Warduke. I absolutely love this so much. As a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, I cannot appreciate enough how much fan service they have done by just including these characters in Wild Beyond the Witchlight. The campaign itself is fun, it's lighthearted, not exactly the tone I would use for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, but I still appreciate what they have done with this. I mean, I love the idea of the circus or the carnival in a role-playing game. Ravenloft has a fantastic like carnival thing that they use. They did a great job with this. I'm not going to fault them anything, and only because of those characters that they included. I'm sorry. I'm a fucking fanboy. Get over it. Finally, we've come to the end. Ghosts of Saltmarsh. This is a reprinting of a connected series of adventures set in or around the town of Saltmarsh that has your players shipwrecked there. And then there's like bandits and ghosts and lizard man and all of this kind of thing. They dropped the ball on this one in that they don't include any rules about ships or anything like that. However, the adventures and the setting are really cool, and you can actually dump this into anywhere that you want, a homebrew setting or, you know, any one of the campaign realms that you're kind of playing your game in. I appreciate that they reprinted Ghosts of Saltmarsh because this is one of my favorite first edition kind of scenario groups. It's fun, it's easy to integrate, and ultimately it's a very satisfying campaign. You can change it up. They give you you can just use the town of Saltmarsh. You don't have to use anything else. And then you've got your campaign kind of there. So really like this one. Enjoyed it. So as you can see, I have ordered the Spelljammer, even though I'm not a fan of Spelljammer. I did order Spelljammer and the Radiant Citadel book, which are on their way. I'm highly anticipating the Dragonlance campaign setting that's coming out. You've basically watched a video from a fucking fanboy of Dungeons and Dragons, and more importantly, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I am not going to apologize for that. I think it's important that if you love something, that you embrace it, okay? Now, you don't have to buy everything Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Pick and choose. What do you want? Okay, you get the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, Monster Manual. They're your key ones. You get those, fantastic. Do you want to play a campaign focused around dragons? Fisburns Treasury of Dragons. Maybe if you want to get started by the Horde of the Dragon Queen or Rise of the Dragon Queen, Horde of Tiamat to kind of get you started. Giants, hey, grab the Storm King's Thunder. Do you want more character races, modern Kanans, monsters of the multiverse, whatever? Like, the beauty part of role-playing games is you don't need everything. You just need what you want in order to make your game the way you want it. I think a lot of people forget this. Now, sure, I've just gone through every single fucking Dungeons and Dragons book that Wizards of the Coast have actually produced. Yeah, I get it. But the whole point of a role-playing game is that you and your players are telling a story, and it's your story. You're the ones that are making the characters do whatever they want to do. So if you don't want your players to face off against demons and devils, don't. If you want your players to play elves and dwarves going against the racial prejudices of humans, fucking do it. It's your game. That's the whole point. It's your fucking game. You and your players are in control. This is what I think a lot of people forget sometimes. I personally would love to see them reprint Dark Sun. Dark Sun is one of my favorite Dungeons and Dragons campaign settings of all time. But it deals with a lot of issues that, like, even back in the day, but more so now, would be considered very delicate. And I understand that Wizards of the Coast will probably shy away from doing that. I get it. It's fine. But it's my game, ultimately. Like, if you don't like the setting, don't buy the setting. If you don't like the tone, if you don't like the themes, you're under no obligation to purchase these products. I hope this video has given you an understanding of why I personally love Dungeons & Dragons so much. I hope if you're watching this and have never played Dungeons & Dragons, perhaps you might be interested now in trying it. I hope that maybe a part of you has watched some of this video and gone, that sounds interesting. I would like to explore that a bit further. If that is the case, and if you don't have a gaming group to play with, you can always go online and find people that are willing to play over Zoom. That's how I play my Call of Cthulhu campaign over Zoom. So I don't have people to play with. That's not a fucking answer anymore. Like, the world is open to you. You can always find a group. But I urge you, please go and read some of the fantastic fantasy novels originally released by TSR and released by Wizards of the Coast in the Dungeons and Dragons setting. I'm talking the Forgotten Realms novels by R.A. Salvatore. I'm talking the Greyhawk novels. I mean, go and read the original Gord the Rogue novels written by Gary Gygax. They're fantastic. The Prism Pentad by Troy Denning. Check out the Ravenloft novels, especially Istrad, Memoirs of a Vampire by P.N. Elrod. You know, there are novels out there that can get your imagination flowing. Just go and read fantasy. Go and read science fiction. Because although I've been talking about Dungeons and Dragons, this is just one role-playing game. There are thousands out there that you can love and enjoy and play. If you don't like fantasy, hey, that's perfectly fine. Traveller, Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, Aliens, if you want to play in the Alien universe. You know, there are role-playing games out there. All I'm saying is, don't dismiss role-playing games just because they're role-playing games. Like, if you watch this video all the way through to the end, then you're clearly interested in the subject matter. If not Dungeons and Dragons, something else. So, with that said, like, subscribe, hit the notification button, but more importantly, leave a comment on what role-playing games you think I should go and explore. I've already checked out a few that other people have mentioned in previous videos, but if there's a role-playing game that you think I would like, or that you think I wouldn't like, but I should check out, let me know. And I will, by all means, go and check it out and have a look at it. I love this kind of stuff. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry that it went on a bit too long. Sorry if I sounded very ranty at the end there. It was not my intention. But please, stay safe. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one.